Welcome to Local Matters. Today, we begin with author, lecturer, and television host Sam Baltrusis. Sam's expertise is in the study of the paranormal, about which he's written over a dozen books and been featured on several national TV shows. Julie visited with Sam via Zoom for a metaphysical conversation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sam, so nice to talk to you today. Now, I hear you're an author, you're a lecturer, a TV and radio host. How did you ever get in the world of the paranormal? How did you get there?
Well, so I was a journalist for 20 years, and I worked on a lot of like entertainment-related journalism. I interviewed celebrities, that sort of thing. And then I wrote a story for a local magazine in 2012 on haunted hotspots in Boston, and that just sort of it really exploded. People really responded to it, and it turned into my first book deal, Ghosts of Boston Haunts of the Hub. And I have written books ever since. I started off as sort of a skeptic when it came to the paranormal, and as you see with my books over the years, I've become more of a believer after having multiple experiences.
Gotcha. Okay. So we'll have to read to find out about those experiences that you've had. And what are some of your favorite haunts on the South Shore here in Massachusetts?
Well, I ran the Plymouth Paracon, and we were supposed to have a Plymouth Paracon 2020. And because of COVID, unfortunately, we weren't able to have it this year. But I love the John Carver, and we had an investigation in the haunted room 309.
Yep.
And also the cemetery as well is absolutely beautiful and also very wicked haunted. So Town Square, that whole area in Plymouth is absolutely magical. And then also I had multiple experiences at the Oliver House, which is in Middleborough. And love that location. Just had an investigation there recently. So highly recommend the Oliver House. And it's a major player in my upcoming book called Ghosts of the American Revolution, which is coming out in February 2021.
Excellent. Okay. Now, you also currently co-host a radio show called Paranormal Rewind. Can you tell us about the show?
Sure. Paranormal Rewind is a live show. It's actually on KCOR, which is an affiliate that's in Las Vegas. And it is something that because of the lockdown, I still wanted to create content. And, unfortunately with Somerville Media, we had to close down for a few months because of the COVID regulations. And I'm like, what can I do and still create content? So I said, let's come up with a radio show. So we launched May 1st, and it's actually become like a juggernaut when it comes to radio shows. We've interviewed all sorts of people. For example, tonight I'm interviewing Susan Slaughter from Paranormal Caught on Camera. I've interviewed Brendan Elvis from A&E's Ghost Hunters. So me and my good friend Keith Bailey, who's based in Texas, we interview people and we rewind cases or locations or books on our show called Paranormal Rewind.
Excellent. Wow. You're all over the country, which is really fascinating. Now, the Wicked Virtual Film Fest 2020 is something that you're the co-host of. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So my good friend Roxy Zwicker, who is sort of my equivalent in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, she and I have worked together on tours, and we've become friends. And I said, Roxy, because of the tour season this year and because of COVID, we wanted to come up with something, an alternative for people to be able to experience Halloween and have fun, but also be safe in the process. So we came up with the idea of doing the Wicked Virtual Film Festival, and it's becoming, it's awesome. I mean, we have some amazing documentaries lined up for this 13-hour film festival that's happening on October 30th, overnight into the 31st. We also just announced that there is going to be a paranormal pass. So if you want to watch just the paranormal themed documentaries, which include Afraid of Nothing, which is directed by Robert Heskey. There's a new documentary on the U.S. Salem called The Soul of the Sea Witch, which is also on that as well. And then we have Brendan Alvis's Cemetery Park. And of course, the Bridgewater Triangle documentary that aired a few years ago, and it's kind of a phenomenon. And so an amazing lineup of films that will be playing over a 13-hour period, but you can also get the Paranormal Pass and be able to watch only 7 hours of it and to get the gist just the paranormal parts of it.
Right. Now, for those people out there that are skeptical about the paranormal, what one sentence could you tell them, or what one thing could you say that would make someone less skeptical?
One sentence is kind of hard to do it. I would just say, if I've always had that one, like when you talk to people, they're like, I'm a skeptic, but, and there was always that one situation where they had a close encounter with something they can't explain. And I'm like, really keep an open mind when you think about that situation. Could it be paranormal?
Okay, that's good advice. Now, you've also been involved with community access centers for a long time, and you're on the board of directors of the Somerville Media Center, which is like us at PAC TV. Talk to me about what you think the importance of community media is.
Well, I'm a huge supporter of community media, and I worked for CCTV with Cambridge as an instructor, and then I was a journalism coordinator at Malden Access Television for 3 years, and then it came to Somerville Media Center in 2017 on their board of directors. For me, the news program at Somerville Media Center is what kind of drew me in, and it really I really wanted to be a part of that because I think that they were doing some amazing things. So what I found during COVID is that the local community access stations are the go-to places for hyper-local journalism. So the shows that you're doing currently, and also what Somerville Media Center is doing as well, is sort of my go-to when it comes to local information. I wanted to know what closed during the COVID lockdown. Where do I go for if I need to get I didn't on the regional news, but you did see that on SMC. So I think we have played a major role during the COVID lockdown in regards to hyper-local news, and it's so important for our organizations to not only to continue doing that, but also to nurture the news programs at these media centers.
You couldn't agree more, and you're speaking to the choir here. You really are. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much. Sam, fascinating stuff. I'm sure we'll have all your contact information at the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a very paranormal day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Julie and Sam. To find out more about Sam's upcoming lectures, books, or productions, visit sambaltrusis.com. Did you know that the Alden House historic site in Duxbury is haunted? It's true, at least on October 23rd and 24th, when they invite you for a mildly frightful haunted tour, maze, trail walk, and scavenger hunt. Costumes and Halloween masks are encouraged for this family-friendly fun. Registration is required. All guests will follow social distancing protocols and wear a face covering. Decorate yours for Halloween. Costumes are strongly encouraged for this family-friendly event. Visit the Alden House Facebook page to learn more. Have you spent some of the pandemic writing that book you always said you would and wondering about your options for publishing it? Join the Plymouth Public Library and a diverse panel from the New England Indie Authors Collective for the virtual program Prolific During a Pandemic: How to Publish Your Book, Advice for Aspiring Authors. Published authors Randy Ross, Judah LeBlanc, Jenny Pivor, and Jason Rubin will share insight into getting new manuscripts to publishers and pandemic-related struggles like dealing with distractions at home while you're writing. This October 24th program starts at 11 a.m. and is first in a 3-part literary salon series. Visit the library's website to register for the Zoom link. Alexis Marie is a local photographer and do-gooder. She's involved with Habitat for Humanity of Greater Plymouth and is a big sister with the Big Brother, Big Sisters of Cape Cod and the Islands. Alexis sat down with the local scene to talk about her experience during COVID.
Hearing the stories in the early COVID days, I'll say, a lot of things that were going on with people in the hospitals and just the sickness and everything kind of running rampant, and also a lot of businesses going out of business due to having been closed and not getting the support that they need. It's just making me realize too that I'm very fortunate to have what I have, and my business is where it's at right now. Again, a lot of people can't say that. I was really not sure what was going to happen. Me having my photography business and it being real estate, things kind of came to a halt for a little bit. It was trying to figure out how I was going to maneuver and how I was going to continue maintaining my clients when we couldn't have the open houses and all that sort. So me having a camera that does a 3D virtual tour, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be fine because we can have this tour where people can come in, tour the house without being physically in it, and they can still see the house and be safe. So I was really promoting that on the full front. Me being a business owner, I'm very full on and hands on with my customers and my clients, and it's always that interaction that I love. So while we have the 3D tours, the agent still having a presence in the sale is huge. So my Front Steps project, it was actually initiated by a group of photographers up in North Massachusetts, and I found out about them by just doing some research. So I'm like, you know what, this is an awesome idea. It's pretty much capturing families during this time, them on their front porch, in their natural environment, kind of showing what was going on around them. So I would go to families' houses, they would be out on the porch, I would grab 2 or 3 shots and send them to them, and I got such great feedback, and I had more people asking to have them done. So they are donation-based photo shoots. So Plymouth One Fund, all the funds I raised during these shoots, I gave to them to distribute to the small businesses here in the area. Well, my personal life, that hasn't stopped either. So I got engaged back in May, which, through all of this has been a huge light in, I guess, a somewhat dark time. My friends, everyone is still around, but we have been taking the precautions of being safe when we meet up with each other to have lunch or even go for a walk downtown Plymouth. And it's just adhering to being safe and keeping each other well and healthy. And I just got a bike too. My fiance bought me a bike and I love it. It's a really cute, huffy beach cruiser. It's got a little basket, a bell. It's very cute. So we take rides down to Woods Hole. We actually did that a few weeks ago and had dinner. So I'm doing that. With my little Destiny, we actually took our bikes out too, went down to Woods Hole and got ice cream and just rode around town. So doing that, and then walking too, just getting out and getting some fresh air. But it's also remembering to take breaks. Like just, put the work aside for, a half hour, an hour, and just get out and enjoy the air. And remember, self-care, especially during this time, is so crucial because it's grounding. It brings you down and it just relaxes and settles you and brings you some peace of mind. Again, realizing how fortunate we are to have gotten through all this and still be established like myself business-wise, and still have my family and my friends and the amazing community that we have here in Plymouth.
To learn more about Alexis Marie, visit alexismariePhotoandDesigns.com. Witchcraft and witches are part of the common culture once a year when we pull out our pointy hats and shoes for a fun costume. But there is a long history of the presence of witchcraft in society that deserves a look. Rare book and manuscript curators Kate Coker and Ruth Ann Miller specialize in medieval and early modern literatures and cultures and are presenting a Facebook and YouTube Live presentation on October 29th called The History of Witchcraft. Drawing on 16th and 17th century books and manuscripts, they'll discuss the cases of the Lancashire or Pendle witches, whose arrests, trials, and executions captured the attention and imaginations of the times. While this event is hosted by the University of Illinois Rare Book and Manuscript Library, along with the Champaign Public Library, you can visit the Pembroke Public Library Facebook page for a link to tune in at 8 p.m. on October 29th. Visit the Beale House in Kingston on Saturday, October 24th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. to witness an outdoor display of over 1,400 handmade origami boxes, representing part of the Soul Box Project, a national collaborative art exhibit. Members of Moms Demand Action and the First Parish Church in Kingston have been folding and decorating these boxes throughout the pandemic, each one representing a person in the United States killed or injured by gunfire. You are encouraged to stop by and talk to the volunteers of this display before it's sent to Washington, D.C. to be part of a larger exhibit on the National Mall. To learn more, visit the Facebook Soul Box Project Display event page. Do you have a bike that's just sitting around in your garage taking up space? On Sunday, October 18th, the Sunrise Rotary is holding a bike drive. From 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., drop off your lightly used bike at the Chick-fil-A in Plymouth, where they will be donated to Bikes Not Bombs, an organization dedicated to providing bikes to people both locally and internationally. If you're not around on the 18th, bikes can be dropped off at the DPW building on Camelot Drive in Plymouth prior to that date. For questions, call Peter McMahon at 508-317-0472. Discover the dark and supernatural side of Plymouth history in a murder, mystery, and mayhem tour through downtown. Walk through time with costume guides and hear stories of murder scenes, hanging sites, and tales of legendary creatures that inhabit our area. Some of these stories will quite literally spring to life. The tour takes place from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Masks and advance registration are required, no exceptions. This 5-night event is booked for all evenings but October 30th. Visit the See Plymouth website to register and learn more. A unique perspective on the pandemic is in this next interview with Plymouth County Treasurer Tom O'Brien, who not only shared how this pandemic has affected him personally, but provided valuable information about funds appropriated to help our community.
We got reports early on in January about what was happening in China. Obviously, in my role as an elected official, I follow the media, I follow the news, and we get a lot of reports on a fairly regular basis about things that might impact folks here in Plymouth County. The first time it became real was when we heard about it transferring over to Europe. And there were a lot of reports at the end of January, early February, that this was not something that was going to be contained on mainland China. It was something that was clearly going to impact the rest of the world. And the question was twofold. One, how big an impact was it going to be, and two, what could we do about it? And so when it hit over in Italy and Spain, those of us that were getting some of these reports really became concerned about what the United States reaction would be. But we knew it was pretty serious, at least from what we were seeing happening around the world, probably, right at the beginning of the February timeframe. The pandemic has impacted all of us in so many different ways. Professionally, it's impacted me in two real ways. One, how we operate on a day-to-day basis. We've had to really change our functions at work. As one of the administrators of the county, as one of those responsible for making some of these decisions, we were going to shut the office down for a period of time. That's not an easy decision to make as a government official, because people need access to the services you're providing. And then we had to decide how we could bring people back to the office, and so we had to begin to space that out. One of the decisions I made very early on is that I would be the first one to come back, that I felt I could serve the role and the function of being in the office and let other people take more time and be at home. Most of the functions we have at Plymouth County can't be done remotely, so I was trying to do as many of them as I could. We have a fairly big office space, and we worked it out and made arrangements so that only 2 people would be in the office on any given day. Not only did we have 6 feet, we had hundreds of feet of separation for people. And then we had to come up with a schedule where people would rotate and begin to work half days. So as Governor Baker issued different phases of reopening, we were able to accommodate that and bring people back to the office. The other question we had from a function standpoint was, when do we allow the public back into the office? We had a box outside where people could leave documents and things that they needed to deliver, but the office remained closed to the general public, so only our staff was invited in. We then transferred to allowing the public in wearing a mask, which is where we are today. The biggest impact was that at the end of March, the federal government passed something that we all know as the CARES Act. And the CARES Act was trillions of dollars that was sent out to different levels of government to make sure that they could begin to deal with this pandemic. So one of the interesting components of the CARES Act is that there was money available to governmental entities to cover some of these costs that were incurred during the pandemic. Think about PPE that they had to buy, personal protection equipment, some of the plastic dividers that they had to put in, face masks, those types of things needed to be purchased right away. Also, a lot of technology had to be purchased so people could work remotely. All of those costs weren't in the budget and needed to be covered. So the CARES Act allowed for that to happen. What was an interesting component of the CARES Act is they allowed governmental entities with a population of 500,000 or more to become what they call a direct recipient or a primary recipient of these funds. Plymouth County, a lot of people don't know this, has 512,000 people. So we just made the mark and were eligible for a portion of the money that was sent to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So under the CARES Act, which was passed on March 27th, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was eligible for $2.7 billion. And so after much discussion with the county commissioners, after a lot of conversation with the state, with the governor's office and with A&F, we decided that it was best for our 27 communities here in Plymouth County for the county to apply for these monies for two reasons. One, we felt we could administer it better, and two, we were local and that we could address the needs that each of our individual community had because we live in these communities. We know these individuals. We work with our town managers and our boards of selectmen and our city councilors. So we thought we were a better recipient of these monies. So on April 14th, we applied for the $90 million through the U.S. Treasury. And on April 27th, we received that money into a bank account contained and administered and managed by my office. So as the Plymouth County Treasurer, I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the county. And so now all of a sudden I had responsibility for $90 million of federal monies that come with a lot of rules and regulations and guidelines that you need to follow. So my job, even though it was fairly large to begin with, grew exponentially because we had to begin to administer this program. The more intelligent things we did right away was create a dedicated website so that people could follow how we were administering this website. So as much for posterity as anything else, that website is plymouthcountycares.com. And we certainly encourage anyone to go and look at that, and they can see of the 27 communities how much money has been disseminated already, where people are in the queue, the program that we have, and how much money each of our individual 27 communities is eligible for. But I can tell you that the administration of these resources takes an inordinate amount of time and effort and coordination. We have a great team. I clearly cannot do this by myself, but I am the program administrator. I am the chief financial officer. So all of those burdens ultimately rest on my shoulders. And so that has increased that responsibility and the workload significantly. So ironically, during this pandemic, I'm spending easily 60 to 70 to 80 hours a week working on not just the administration of this program, but the other parts of my job. Lastly, there's been a big impact because I am also the treasurer for our joint purchase group, which is a health group that provides health insurance for municipal employees, the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. That group does $80 million of business in a year, providing health insurance for the subscribers of our member units. And so with this pandemic, we weren't sure how that was going to impact health insurance. And obviously some people have had to go to the hospital to deal with COVID itself and to have tests, and regrettably some of them have found themselves in the hospital for an extended stay. And we think there are going to be some serious health issues that result from the fact that people haven't been able to have their routine checkups or follow up on routine surgeries that they need to do, or have their cancer screenings, or have their annual physicals. And so we expect that that will have an impact on the cost. And we're right now deciding, how do we deal with that? Do we keep money set aside to be able to cover that? Should that create a surge that we expect whenever the pandemic lessens or a vaccine is created or discovered? So those are some of the challenges that we deal with on a pretty regular basis. And so it's been a lot to deal with and a lot to address, but we have a great team in Plymouth County, and with the work of a lot of people and a lot of effort and the support of the Plymouth County Commissioners, I think we've been able to manage our way through it. I have two personal stories that I think are important to share because they're indicative of, I think, two sides of the pandemic. I have a very, very dear friend of mine, I've known him for a long time, who had traveled out of the state and was at a function. This was in early March, right before we really knew how much of an impact this could have. And regrettably, most of the people at the function contracted the disease. It took a number of days for him to get to the hospital, and unfortunately by the time he got to the hospital, he wasn't breathing. It was clear that he had the virus, and he had to end up being on a ventilator for more than 20 days. And it was very much touch and go. I'm very close to his family, and fortunately, my friend was one of the lucky ones. The second story is an interesting one. It involves my wife, who I adore. I actually call her my Wonder Woman, and she kind of proved this through this whole scenario. She has a disease that causes her to be immunosuppressed, and the disease had rekindled itself in the August and September timeframe the year before the pandemic, and she needed some major surgery. We finally got to the point where she could have some surgery in December, but the recovery was a lot more difficult than I think anybody had imagined. Her weight continued to go down. She wasn't able to eat, and one of the challenges was that she'd used up all her time at work. The day after, the pandemic hit, they had to shut down her place of business and have everybody work from home. So from March 15th until the end of June, my wife did not leave the house, was able to work remotely, but as a result of that, was able to relieve some of the stress, be in an environment where I could care for her on a regular basis, but she, more importantly, could care for herself. Now, ironically, she's one of these people, and I wish I were. She still worked very hard from home, but she's not facing a 2-hour commute into Boston. She doesn't have the stress of dealing with the interaction of people, and she was very concerned, rightfully so, about how the disease might impact her, and certainly did not want to be in a position of contracting COVID. But what's been fascinating to me are the people that don't realize how serious this is, that to this day don't recognize that this is a very serious virus that is in fact killing people of all ages. And I think once we take that very fact seriously, we're better able to deal with it. And it was frustrating to hear people make the case that, well, this was just a more serious strain of the flu. It's not something that we should worry about or be concerned about. No, that is absolutely false. Scientific information is available to us about how serious this is, and we need to continue to take this seriously. I have to focus in on my job and getting that done, and so a lot has been put on hold. And the real question becomes, what are we going to do when we have a vaccine? Because I don't think until a vaccine is available, we'll be able to experience some of the things that we did pre-COVID. I hope this has given us maybe some more empathy to what people are going through. So many people have lost their jobs. So many people are struggling. And I think we need to continue to find a way to help them in any way possible. I do hope that a sense of compassion is something that we're thinking about more, and an empathy to even people in our own circle. And hopefully that's something that we can carry with us. The resiliency of the human spirit really gives me hope. We always find ways to deal with what is thrown at us. And so even when that has such a real impact as this pandemic has on each of our lives, we're finding ways to cope, and we're finding ways to deal with it. It's remarkable the time we live in, how quickly science can address and deal with some of the things that challenge us. So I have every confidence that we will have a vaccine. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's remarkable to me how the resources have come together. This, in the long run, will strengthen us as a country. It will remind us that the ability to be involved in our government is probably one of the best things we have as Americans. And so what I hope it does also is encourage participation in our government, whether it's a fascination now with science and some of our young people that want to get involved in a scientific career because they want to solve the next challenge that comes. I've had the chance to be on a lot of Zoom meetings now. I was just on one not that long ago with a caucus of young people and talking about ideas, and I was there as a government official, and I was impressed with their inquisitiveness and their enthusiasm. It really gives me a lot of hope for the future.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing your story and information that affects all of us in Plymouth County. To learn more, visit PlymouthCountyCares.com. Join Plymouth Patuxent for a family-friendly 17th century-inspired spooky Halloween event. Wear your Halloween costume to follow lantern and pumpkin-lit paths through the English Village to the Family Game Pavilion, where kids can try games like gourd bowling and pilgrim hat hoop toss. As the sky darkens, there'll be a creepy story by the fire at the village fort and a gift bag of Halloween goodies for each child to take home. There are 2 dates, October 23rd and 30th from 5 to 7 p.m. Visit plymouth.org to register. Meaghan Quinn is a poet and author of the book Slow Dance Bullets. This is her original work.
Hi, my name's Meaghan Quinn, and I am a local poet, and today I'm going to be reading a few poems out of my book Slow Dance Bullets, and I hope you enjoy. Car crash, 4th of July. There are 2 of us when we wake in a puff of seagrass and diesel. We don't know how we got here, but we know enough to never leave. The pall of fireworks hangs heavy. You sit up slow, shirtless, rubbing your ribs. I was afraid one of us wouldn't wake up, you say. Your voice is alive with the fear that slicks the slow of tongue when you sign your name in cursive on the wall of my wet cheek. Later you'd say when you put your ear close to the ground, you could hear the seagrass whispering how badly you wanted to know its secret. Boardwalk. You flick ashes outside knockoff jewelry shops and then pee in the changing room with the door open and pull on your puka shells. That's when we buy fried squid from the food truck, lobster creamed ice, crepes embossed in foil. We smell clams thawing under sand, the cut lemons, the waves, the water that has run out of lies to tell, and we tell ourselves a lie again. The one where we're unashamed of the arrows erupting in our own bodies. For hours, you tan and you read. You rub oil along the greased valley of your neck where sunspots start to rise like fat pepperonis, the kiln of your jeans baking. Maybe later we'll come back to this spot on the sand and give way to everything we've pushed down for so long. If you couldn't tell yet, a lot of these poems focus on a relationship between two women, and most of them are set by the beach, arguing. It's pouring outside, and I keep digging my teeth into her shoulder. The tempo of a heat storm is thrumming, coming closer, with each cruel gust pushing open the window until the wind kicks on the needle of the record player like a switchblade, and she throws her hands up. Then a blackout. Sirens. We find dry shelter in the bathroom as the pipes secure us, holding us in. All night, Carole King drones from the record player as water washes through the pipes like beans plinking through a rainstick. I dream that the two of us are mice moving through the rifts in the wood, scampering away from storms. Read a couple more. And here the beloved switches genders, which kind of mirrors the fluidity happening inside the book between the speaker and her own dealings with figuring out who she is, who she wants to love. And this next poem is appropriately titled Reluctance. Reluctance. Under waves of starched sheets I drift. A hot air balloon painting hovers above the headboard. I watch TV reruns in his arms, but part of me feels like floating. Both windows are cracked. The air reeks of the sea. Damp lilacs I place over his eyes curl as though they are paper prayers. I want to walk to the docks, but I fear the white sail of whales. His hand picks through the locks of my hair, catching in his watch, broken and for show. Tonight he is the prophet Jonah, guiding me through the sands of Nineveh, where we will fast and float away reluctantly, catching warm currents of waves. And I'll end with this poem. The book does cover a lot of the opioid epidemic, specifically in Massachusetts. So this poem kind of is an homage, a sonnet to someone I lost. It's called Because I Slept Through the Funeral. You were in the hospital, but I didn't want to go, as horses clopped puddles of snow, and you lay dying of an overdose. The body, a tank of tubes, lonely ghost. Then I couldn't hear anything but your lungs through which air got stuck. So the gelding breathed through you, plumes of air, gusts blown from monsoons. Were you withering in a negligee as your heartbeat started to regulate? Then your organs burned across snow fields, heating a hospital bed unsturdy on 4 wheels. You said you saw the mare, noble, placid. I carried you like wood, placed you in the casket. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Meaghan, and thank you for watching this episode of Local Matters. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook to keep updated on community stories and the ways that we shine a light on you. From all of us at PAC TV, have a happy and safe week. We'll see you next time.